One of the big things we were bringing up to the Brexiteers all the way back in 2016 was the fact that when we were part of the EU, we had all these different organizations that we didn't just pay for. All the other 27 nations that were with us at that time were also paying into these organizations that were essentially regulatory bodies that would oversee, are these regulations being followed? Are these companies following the rules? Are they essentially doing what they're being told to do? And of course, you need these bodies if you are going to, well, continue with this. So, one of the first things that happened, at least a lot of people didn't realize, when Article 50 got triggered, the government and itself, the Whitehall, had to go and expand these bodies or even replicate those bodies to make sure that there was a UK equivalent. And this has resulted in a massive increase in the size of Whitehall. Now, of course, we've heard a lot very recently about a number of Brexiteers saying how they want to reduce the size of the state. And these are exactly the organizations that they're talking about. But as we said at the beginning, you need these types of regulatory bodies in order to make sure that companies, businesses, and other organizations are basically following the rules that you are setting out. You need these regulators, and specifically the regulating body, because they're the ones who who are like the observers, the watchers on the wall, to make to use the phrase, to make sure that they are following the rules. And now we are seeing all these Brexiteers, including Liz Truss, saying that, oh, we need to reduce the size of the state. And they are specifically talking about these regulatory bodies. And if you get rid of these regulatory bodies, well, at that point, who's watching these companies to see if they're obeying the rules? Who's watching these companies to make sure that safe products are coming into the country? Who's watching to make sure that companies aren't dumping chemicals into the river? Who do you report to? Because you can't just pick up the phone and call the police, although I'm sure you could if you caught someone doing it. But at the end of the day, you need those regulatory bodies to facilitate a lot of these actions. And because now we are seeing this massive drive to sort of deregulate the UK, we are seeing them talk about shrinking the size of the state. And as we've already said, if you shrink the size of the state, you are basically saying that the government is not going to do something that it used to do. And this was not laid out by the Brexiteers in 2016. They expressly said, whenever this was brought up, that we would replicate these bodies and that we would continue to have them. But of course, now they realize, A, there's an increased cost in having these bodies. And of course, at the end of the day, they don't want these regulatory bodies involved at all because they're right-wing libertarians. As we've said multiple times before, they want no government intervention in any of the markets whatsoever. So today we're going to go over Jacob Rees Mogg's comments on this, as he describes this as the prize for Brexit. And of course, he is, he's the sort of minister in charge of Brexit opportunities, and I highly suspect he will continue that in Truss's government as well. So before we go jumping over to the article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And of course, there is the YouTube subscription thank you button down below. And yes, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel. So over we go to The Independent with their article on this with the title of Jacob Rees Mogg says government should no longer deliver certain functions as a Brexit prize. Okay with that. Jacob Rees Mogg has urged the next Prime Minister to slash back the government's role as a prize of Brexit, suggesting it should not deliver certain functions at all. So we've got to ask, what exactly does he mean that we shouldn't deliver? What functions should we not deliver anymore? Because these are pretty important. Because who looks after sort of chemical regulations? Well, it's currently a UK body that, again, is part of the government that monitors all this stuff and watches what's going on. If you get rid of that, who watches those rules then? Who makes sure that those companies are following the rules? This is like saying, yeah, we're going to have a prison, but we're going to make sure that the prisoners essentially run the prison. There's going to be no warden, no prison governor, or anything like that. You can already see probably the disaster that's going to be. But anyway, it continues. A strong supporter of Liz Truss to win the race for number 10, the arch-Brexiteer has called for a rethinking of the British state, arguing that mere cuts in public spending will not go far enough. So, what we've been saying all this time about the Brexiteers, at least they're finally now starting to be honest about what they wanted to do with Brexit. The Leave campaign won the 2016 campaign, partly on the promise to boost spending, notably by over the £350 million a week on the NHS. But Mr. Rees Mogg is pointing out to a different agenda. Our departure from the European Union necessitates a rethinking of the British state, the Minister for Brexit Opportunities has written in a newspaper article. This means going beyond ministers looking for financial trims and haircuts and considering whether the state should even deliver certain functions at all. And this was one of the big promises of the Leave campaign, that they would increase spending after Brexit. You know, this was their big thing because people want good public services. We've been over this. I don't know how many articles that have shown polls of people being asked, do you want good public services? Yes, everyone does. Do you want, are you willing prepared to pay higher taxes for that? Yes, everyone agrees to that. So, this just goes to show just how out of touch people like Rees Mogg really are. So it comes after Ms. Truss has vowed to press the accelerator on ripping up thousands of EU regulations if she wins power, which has raised fear that protections will disappear. The Liberal Democrats said the comments would raise fear that the worst damage to regulations with our neighbours is not yet done. Mr. Rees Mogg has argued that tearing back the state's role would allow the next government to help people with the rocketing energy bills, which the leadership race favourite says she would do through tax cuts. As a supporter of Liz Truss to become the next Prime Minister, I'm a strong advocate and benefit of tax cuts to the economy and to the British consumer, he wrote in the Daily Telegraph. To a right-wing libertarian, tax cuts are always the solution to everything, even though, if anything, they cause far more problems than they actually solve. This call was endorsed by another senior Truss backer, the former Brexit Minister David Frost, who is expected to be given a leading role in her administration. Oh, joy, Frost is back. Oh, no. Rees Mogg was absolutely right about the need to, quote, rethink the British state after Brexit, Lord Frost said. Lyra Martin, the Lib Dem Foreign Affairs spokesperson, said, rather than try to dismantle the British state, maybe Rees Mogg should try and tear down the huge amounts of red tape which have been erected thanks to the Conservatives' trade deal with Europe. The Best for Britain, Better Democracy campaign group seized on Mr. Moggs, claiming the £4 billion had been from his own found from his own efficiency drive, arguing that it was too little to avoid the drastic cuts. It will likely mean to the lead to the civil service stopping delivering functions that include essential public services that Tory governments continue to run into the ground, said Naomi Smith, the chief executive. The call comes after the respective Institute for Financial Studies warned the big spending cuts are inevitable if Ms. Truss does pursue the £30 billion plus of tax cuts she plans, calling them unrealistic. Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, said that there is nothing efficient about cutting frontline services, who are already overwhelmed by backlogs when families are already struggling to make ends meet. Now Liz Truss is pledging even more cuts, which will only worsen the backlogs we already have in courts, airports, GPs, leaving people with even longer lines for passports, driving licenses, and even vital appointments. So this is just going to go, I think, from worst to even bad. But this goes to exactly what we've been talking about since the very beginning of all this. Brexit was this right-wing libertarian project where they thought, let's just go all in, reduce the size of the state, get rid of all regulations, and this is the important one, let's just reduce all tariffs to zero, because cutting the government's budget and money it gets from tariffs, seems like a really good idea. But But that's the kind of crazy nonsense that these people, like Mogg, are hooked on. And that's what people don't want. And I've said it, they are not going to risk a general election when they have so much power and so much to lose if they went to a general election, because we know from all the polls they would massively lose their majority. And certainly the polls that they're looking at currently now, they're looking that they would completely lose, giving Labour an absolute overall majority. So there is no way that they will go for a general election. They will spend the next 2 years doing whatever they possibly can to follow this crazy right-wing agenda. And part of the reason why they got rid of Boris and part of the reason why they were so upset was because Boris just seemed incapable to fully commit to this agenda and this plan that they want to do. And now, unfortunately, you've got Liz Truss, who is going to put these people in, who is going to massively accelerate this type of conversion to this, right-wing fantasy libertarian paradise, and it's going to absolutely become a massive car crash. And it will be up to whoever is the next government to actually sort all these problems out. And it is going to be incredibly hard. If we get a Labour government coming in with the absolute catastrophe that they are about to cause with all these crazy plans, then it is going to be incredibly hard for Labour to sort all these out. Now, one of the drastic things that Labour could actually do is we could rejoin the single market customs union, and we could very easily just do an EU alignment bill, which we did back in the day when we joined the single market and customs union, even when we sort of aligned with the Maastricht Treaty. So we've done this many times. We've done this twice already. We could just easily sign a bill just saying we are aligning with all EU laws and regulations. All companies have a year to sort of comply and sort of get behind them. Sign that in, join this, join the single market, join the customs union, bish bash bosh, and that would solve a whole heap of our problems. But we've got to start, sort of pushing for that if that push comes to shove. But of course, as always, let me know what you think. But of course, I've been warning and telling you all about this for quite some time, so should be too much of a surprise. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, remember to leave a comment down below, letting you know what you think down below as well. And of course, we'll see you all next time.